AKAPADers, welcome back to Rob Liefeld Week. I'm Peter A. DeLuca, aka Pad69, your guide to everything Rob Liefeld this week. And I apologize if you're not into Rob Liefeld or his creations or his comic book work, or you really do believe that he cannot draw feet. We're going to debunk that later this week. I'm sorry, this is not the week for you. There's just so much hype around Deadpool 3, and yes, the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, a billion dollar empire, is reliant on Deadpool, which should never really be the case. It's amazing that they positioned this. I still say this. I want Deadpool 3 just to be another wacky Deadpool adventure. I just want Deadpool being Deadpool, doing cool mercenary things, and you know, trickle in some X-Men mutants here and there. But Deadpool should never be a part of anything universe-saving at all. It's out of the scope of the character. That's just my opinion. Sound off below if you don't agree. So, Deadly Reunion, Episode 4, Season 1, X-Men Animated Series, or The X-Men, as we called it back in the day. The X-Men animated series has gone through so many title changes, because technically, you know, we still want to call it X-Men 97. We call it all these things, but here's the big thing. Episode 4, Season 1, Deadly Reunion. Professor Xavier is attempting to rehab Sabretooth. This story was also echoed in Uncanny X-Men. It's a part of the Joe Mad era, where at the time, Sabretooth kind of like tricks Professor Xavier, and he goes through Psylocke. It's one of my all-time favorite Uncanny X-Men issues. Great fight scene illustrated by Joe Mad. Maybe we'll give that a little bit more detail down the road. But in this episode of the X-Men animated series, we got our first glimpse, our first hint, our first big idea that Deadpool can exist outside of the comic book page, and it was mind-blowing at the time. Now, after this appearance, and it's only for a millisecond, Deadpool would appear, I believe, 2 or 3 more times. I believe Morph transforms into him at one point. I forget what episode that's in. Might have been the Mr. Sinister episode, because Morph doesn't really come back until season 4, I believe. I could be, I would have to double check all that. But AKAPADers, this was big. And it was more of a definition of the heights of Rob Liefeld and his creations, because at this point, Cable had not yet premiered in the X-Men animated series, and we thought this was going to be it. Like, this was going to be the only Rob Liefeld creation we were going to get in the animated series. Little did we know that the animated series would, you know, gain steam with seasons 2 and seasons 3, and eventually whittle out by the end of season 4 going into season 5, where it changed animation studios, and you can clearly see that with the animation style. But this was nothing but fun. Sorry guys, quick phone call. Alright, AKAPADers, sorry about that, AKAPADers. Sometimes during the business day, we get phone calls. Yeah, so Deadpool first off the page appearance, and he's later to appear 2 more times, because now I looked it up, 2 more times in the X-Men the animated series. But with all that, come on, enough talking, let's get to the cartoon. Alright, so grown men watching cartoons, that's today's theme. What is with that glare? Okay, so you guys can see, here we go. Season 1, Episode 4, Deadly Reunions. Magneto, something, Professor X. Let's get right into it. We are going to launch the episode. Look at that wonderful thumbnail. To me, my X-Men. This is what we want. So we get the opening sequence here. So we get it right after, I mean, like, it's a couple seconds right after the logo. X-Men logo coming up. Sabretooth screaming. He's going to have a little bit of a flashback. And there he is, Deadpool. Bingo, that's our boy. The first non-comic book appearance of Deadpool. How amazing is that? And you guys can see how quickly it just fades away. Goodbye. But we have Maverick. You guys remember Maverick? He was beyond cool. But yeah, and Omega Red. So that's it. So look, guys. Season 1, Episode 4. We had no idea that Cable would ever come into the series. And that was even a big surprise. Yeah, so I don't know. I was debating if I should show you the other two appearances. I think they're just meaningless or inconsequential to the larger point. The Rob Liefeld creations of this X-Men, New Mutants, X-Force era, they 100% connected and resonated. But at the time, everything was cable. Deadpool was still just like a beat 'em up dude. Like you put him inside of an issue of X Force, and Kane would beat him up, or Cable would beat him up, and so on and so forth. Remember, Deadpool wasn't even significant enough of a character to appear in the Spider-Man X Force crossover Sabotage. That was, Shatterstar had more of a moment in that arc than Deadpool, and Deadpool didn't even appear, which is funny because Black Tom's featured in Sabotage, and Black Tom was highly connected to Deadpool, storyline wise at the time. Everything when it comes to Rob Liefeld creation at the time was cable, but the later generation was able to transform Deadpool into something that not even Rob Liefeld could ever imagine. And this goes more into the argument of how do we give credit to comic book creations when we have a long line, a long lineage, and even during the 90s when you would get a lot of people on certain characters very fast. How much of that credit do you break up between point A and point B, and who do you give that credit to? Because just coming up with the character and having the character appear in the comic book doesn't quite create the character. The character just appears, and it can appear for all kinds of reasons. But the actual creation of the character, I feel like the more interpretations and the more expansion we get of some of these characters, we see what sticks. And then eventually the perfect origin gets like whittled down. It gets like perfected, and that can take decades to do. And if you go through comic book history, that's 100% the case. So I'm still animated about it. Rob Liefeld, I get it. He wants sole credit. Rob Liefeld wants to steal sole credit for the creation of Deadpool. He wants to already dismiss everything with Fabian. He sets all of this up I'm almost like quoting him. He sets this up on his podcast. Rob Liefeld wants sole absolute credit of Deadpool, and that is one of the most disingenuous things a person. Rob Liefeld's even structuring some of his arguments and not to trust YouTubers, and I feel like he's talking directly to me in this channel because he knows we're out here, guys. He knows the AKAPAD Army is out here bringing the logic, bringing the critical thinking, bringing the brain activity, if you guys know what I mean. But no, guys, what do you think? What do you think? How do we define a comic book character? And then once it's defined, do we backtrack and just say, hey, Frank Miller is a co-creator of The Dark Knight. He's a co-creator of Batman, because there's no other. Whenever someone adapts Batman, they go to Frank Miller first, right? They don't go to Bob Kane. They don't.